We're just a couple of weeks away from getting these kiddos back into the classrooms. And I thought we could talk a little nutrition this morning. Breakfasts are such a key when you talk about teens and youngsters' health, good night rest, and then the breakfast and lunch. And sometimes it's easy to just say, hey, get what you want. But maybe important to look down that road of nutrition. And kind enough to join me this morning, Akron Children's Hospital nutritionist Abby Granger on board with us. And Abby, where do you start when we talk about proper nutrition for a long day for a lot of these kiddos?
For breakfast, that's the first place we want to start. So getting off on the right foot, our first meal of the day for breakfast is a great way to do that. So making sure that our breakfast has some sort of protein item and some sort of fiber item that comes from our fruits and vegetables and whole grains is a surefire way to make sure that your kids have the energy to last them throughout the rest of the school day.
So the breakfast is the key. What about option for a breakfast to get the proper fuel in and maybe some of the fuel that maybe might slow these kiddos down?
Yeah, so the best kind of fuel to give our kids is the fuel that comes from our protein and our whole grains and fruits and vegetables. So a great example of that would be like a yogurt parfait. So lots of good protein from that yogurt, as well as some other nutrients that our kiddos are needing, like calcium. You could top that with some berries or some sort of fruit. That's always a delicious combination. Then maybe sprinkle some granola on there just to give it a little bit of a crunch and to get some whole grains in there. Stuff like that is a little bit of a better option compared to some of these other items that are marketed for breakfast. So if you think of things like cereal that are pretty high in sugar, as well as some other things like Pop-Tarts and breakfast pastries, those are all filled with added sugars that really is going to weigh our kids down. It gives them energy for about 30 minutes, and the next thing you know, they may be falling asleep halfway through their first couple periods of class.
With us is Abby Granger, Akron Children's Hospital dietitian. Getting the protein to these youngsters also a big key, and there's a lot of creative ways to do that.
Yes, so there's definitely some fun ways to do it. Yogurt is just one option that we could give our kiddos, but some other kids like to reach for things like eggs. Eggs are delicious in the morning. Putting that on top of some whole grain toast, maybe with, some sliced up apples on the side could be a really great way to get some fuel into them. Peanut butter is a great option that you can toss into some yogurt in the morning or toss into some oatmeal. Some other ideas, some turkey bacon would be a great alternative to, some regular bacon just to get a little bit more protein in there. So there's definitely some fun ways to get them in there without it, having to be like boring, old, different ways, just to get some nutrients into them.
Abby Granger is with us, again, dietitian with Akron Children's Hospital. And Abby, a lot of these youngsters will eat lunch 10:30 to 11:30, 12 o'clock noon, and then they have the rest of the day and maybe after school activities. So you need a good, proper lunch to get them through the rest of the day. Can you help out the parents, guardians on this front as well?
Absolutely. I see lots of children that have those really early lunch times, and then by the end of the day, they're just ravenous when they get home from school. On top of that, like you said, they have all of those after-school activities. So we want to try and take that little extra step to plan ahead some meals. So I always encourage my patients to pack their lunch when they can, just to get a little bit more nutrients in there, and that's going to last a little bit longer than some of the school lunches do. So, again, making sure that lunch is something that models the My Plate guidelines. So getting lots of good protein options in there, get some fruits and vegetables, and then trying to include some dairy items and some whole grain items as well. So maybe that involves, packing up some turkey roll-ups in a whole grain tortilla, and then you could have some diced apples on the side with some cucumbers. Another great thing to try is something called freeze-dried fruit. So it's basically just fruit in like a chip form. So often I see these kids packing these Doritos and these chips, because it's salty, it's crunchy, it's something that they want at lunch. It's easy to pack for lunch. I encourage a lot of my patients to swap that out for some freeze-dried fruit here and there just to get a little bit more nutrients in there and try to give them something that's not going to weigh them down.
And then, Abby, when we talk about nutrition, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about hydration and liquids, because there's real good ones, there's good ones, and then there's ones that these kids should stay away from to keep on course for the course of the whole day.
You hit the nail on the head. So hydration is a huge part of making sure that our bodies are functioning appropriately. I always encourage my kids to bring a water bottle with them to school if the school allows it, making sure they always have that handy to make sure that they're always staying hydrated, and trying to stick to the water and the low-fat milk when we can. So those are our first two options that we really want to stick with for hydration. There's lots of other things, marketed to us. So some flavored waters are definitely okay, too. The biggest thing we want to see with drinks is to avoid those sugary drinks. So things like fruit juices and pops and sweet tea. Those are filled with added sugars that our bodies just don't use as efficiently throughout the day. And again, they're really just going to weigh the kids down, and their energy is going to tank out. So trying to stick to water when we can, and making sure we can include some low-fat milk in there for some protein and some calcium, and trying to avoid those sugary drinks as much as we can.
Perfect. Abby, thank you for the time, the visit, the education. I'm sure a lot of parents, guardians are etching down a lot of the great things you had to say with us this morning. Thanks for the visit. We're going to put your conversation with us up on WAKR.net for all the parents to go back and listen to, so that they can get and keep refreshed on the education you gave us this morning. Thank you for the time.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.